again to another edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address, and thank you very, very much for being with us today. These podcasts, which are designed to talk about the impact of the longevity revolution on our families, our community, and our world, also must deal with some of the issues of families and communities dealing with trauma. And that's really where we want to focus today. And to that extent, it is a great pleasure to welcome Lane Gardner, the president and co-founder of Thread. This is a very, very interesting organization based in New York City that deals with the impact and dealing with trauma, not only in individuals, but families and communities, and dealing with it in a very, very interesting and powerful way. And so let's jump right into it and welcome Lane and welcome all of you to the Seekers of Meaning podcast. And by the way, if you want to contact us, you can go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com, or email me at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. Lane, welcome. Welcome to Seekers of Meaning. It's very nice to see you.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here. Thank you, Rabbi Address.
It's a very, very interesting concept, Thread. Talk to me about, this is your baby. You founded it. You're the co-founder and the president of it. I think you mentioned before you co-founded with your husband. What is this and why this name? It's a kind of curious name so that people don't think you're in business of sewing things.
Exactly. Well, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that uses the arts as a therapeutic tool to help adult individuals and communities who suffer from trauma. We use the arts in a very specific way. We bring together individuals who have shared stories. And with those shared stories, we're able to help our participants transform difficult experiences into powerful original works of art, and specifically songs at this point. We will eventually be expanding into other modalities as well, but at this point, we are helping individuals transform difficult experiences into powerful works of art.
So the obvious next question is, well, why did you start to do this? You just couldn't have been walking down, 33rd Street one day in New York City saying, I have nothing to do, so I think I'll start this. There's got to be a story here. What's the story?
Definitely. So I've been in the arts my whole life. I was born into a musical family, and everyone was self-taught musicians. And so my experience as a young person was just the connective experience of making music with other people, with family members. And we did that in such a way through tough times, through happy times. So that was sort of my formative experience of the power of music, the power of the arts. I also had an incredibly traumatic, difficult childhood. And so after several years, I found myself pursuing theater. And I was working in community theater. I was taking voice lessons. And for me, that was a really important way to cope with life. I kind of didn't know it at the time, but it was a very safe space. There was a lot of support and acceptance in the arts for me. And so I went on to study music, classical music, in high school, in college, and worked professionally as a singer-actor for a lot of years. At the same time, I was also teaching young people. As in between shows, I was teaching in elementary schools and community centers, and I was always developing ways to have programming that could make an impact and could really help young people in a way that I understood that the arts had. So it was kind of this journey as I myself was an artist working and performing. I was always curious and interested. How do I help other people with through the arts? How do I help them feel better with whatever's going on in their life? And so it became this journey of human development through the arts is basically how it started for me. So fast forward, or I should say rewind at this point, I was having my son, who actually just turned 17 years old yesterday. And I wasn't performing anymore. I was home. I was a mom, taking care of this young baby. And I realized that being a parent starts to sort of bring up all your stuff, right? And it sort of, helps you kind of know yourself in a very different way. And so over the course of that experience of being a young mom, I realized that it was time to start telling my own story. Instead of telling the stories of theater and shows, I began to realize that telling my own story was going to be helpful and healing for me. So I started writing songs, which I had never done before. And through that process of helping myself, I began to realize more and more that helping others to share their story through a creative process is very connective. It's very cathartic. It's very healing. And so I began to experiment in the teaching that I was doing in the schools that I was working with. How do I use the arts in a more intentional way? And just sort of trying on different kinds of programming. And we found that it was incredibly helpful and incredibly effective for young people. Then we got to the point where we wanted to start to bring this work to adults. And we had an opportunity in 2018. We were invited to work with students at Parkland and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shortly after the tragic shooting in their school. And we wanted to be able to step into that space and bring the power of music to them. And we were only there for a few days, but what we saw was in combining a therapeutic approach with the creative approach, it was extremely, extremely effective. And the young people there were able to write a powerful song that helped them so much in the course of that short period of time. And after we came back from Parkland, we said, it's time. It's time for us to start Thread. It's time for us to start this nonprofit and be incredibly intentional about serving adults who are suffering from trauma with this combination of therapy and creative expression as well. And that's sort of the inception of Thread. It's been a lifelong process for me. It's been a lifelong journey for me. But it is absolutely my life's work as well.
Why the name Thread?
That's a great question. So the way that I think of stories, whether it be my own story, whether it be the stories of the people that I'm working with, is we all have individual threads, right? Which are our experiences of a situation that was difficult for us, or that impacted us in some kind of way. And in the course of conversation in the workshops that I've had with the participants, what tends to happen is that you start to see these common threads of people's experience start to emerge through the process that we take them through. And those threads belong to each of those individuals. However, the stories and the experience tend to be very similar. They tend to have a powerful sharing that we all can say, oh, I don't feel alone in this because somebody else has experienced something similar as me. And so we named the organization Thread because we all bring our individual threads to the table, to life, to the process of the creative expression that we're enabling. But those threads begin to weave together into a much more collective story that we all can look at and listen to and helped by and be inspired by and be, also feel validated and also feel that we belong to a greater community.
The pandemic, now that, it's well over a year now. Certainly, this is a trauma to many, many people. Certainly, a lot of the people that we deal with in Jewish Sacred Aging, they may not name it as trauma, but in many ways, on a actual physical and certainly in many ways psychological basis, it is a traumatic experience, has been a traumatic experience for many people who've never experienced trauma as you have, like with the school shootings or racism or something else like this. But it still is. It's life disrupting. How have you been involved with dealing with this in threads with the pandemic?
So we initially launched a virtual pilot program when the pandemic and the lockdown started about a year ago. And we wanted to be able to get in with our community in real time, with what they were going through, what was being experienced. I don't know if it's easy to remember back from a year ago at this point, but, everyone didn't know what they were dealing with, didn't know what was going on, what was happening. And there was an incredible amount of anxiety, incredible amount of, disruption, like you were saying. And so what we did was we designed a program to run virtually for members of our Thread community to try it out and see if we could do it virtually. And what we found was that it was an overwhelming success. We did not lose any of the process by doing it virtually. We were able to meet with a group of about 6 people over the course of about 6 weeks. And through that therapeutic process, we came together and we shared our experiences of the pandemic, the anxiety, the disruption, the lack of connection, the isolation that everyone was feeling. And the process with myself as the teaching artist and also with our music therapist, we were able to work in tandem to not only uncover what were the shared threads that everyone was experiencing at that time, but we were able to transform them into something that was pretty powerful and pretty amazing. And when we look back at the original virtual pilot, what we saw was that the connection was enormous, which is what everyone was suffering from so much, was the lack of connection and feeling the uncertainty of not being able to be together and not knowing when you could be together. So we were able to deliver in real time, and we found that in addition to increasing the connection, in addition to increasing feelings of being together, even if it's on a virtual platform, we also saw incredible reduction of anxiety in all of the participants that we were working with. We also saw greater levels of being able to use tools for self-soothing and for feeling better. Because it's not only the process that we're taking them through in terms of helping to transform difficult experiences into something really powerful, but they also have this song on the other side of the workshops that is a tangible product that they can return to for support, for connection, for remembering the ways in which they were able to transform something really difficult into something powerful. So it's a reminder, it's a tool not only for them, but it also is meant to be shared with wider communities. It's a conversation piece. It's a conversation starter about the trauma that we're all experiencing, about the mental health struggles that are rising right now, that are becoming an urgent health crisis right now. And so when we're able to have these tangible representations of our experiences, we're able to share them. And that can have a bit of what I call like a knock-on effect, right? Where the person who's collaborating with the people in that workshop, they're having their experience of healing and connection. But then when they share that song with other people, then they're having a conversation about what their experience was and how it helped them. And that is also then inspiring and helpful to the person that they're talking to. And then that song could be shared in a larger audience. And that creates wider and wider circles of connection and healing and conversation, which not only helps to destigmatize mental health and trauma, but it also helps for everyone to know that they're not alone in what they're going through. And that's a really important part, especially right now as we're still in this pandemic and feeling isolated from one another. That experience of connection is really one of the most important things.
So, and in these workshops that you do, let me understand this correctly, that there's an activity, there's a goal. In this case that you're just referring to, it is the writing of a song, and the same thing with the school shooting. There is a song, and that the process of the conversation in writing this song achieves the therapeutic or thread linkage that you're after. Am I correct in summarizing it that way?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. So
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So the whole process is about creating a safe space for individuals to feel that they can express what they're going through and be seen and heard in a safe and supportive way. We take them through a lot of games and activities that are sort of icebreaker activities, wordplay games, and we kind of just get the creative juices flowing. And what happens is that what we start to see are these common themes start to emerge through these games, basically, these theater games, these music games. And we start to pull out those threads of those common experiences. And that becomes the topic or the theme or the content for the song. And then we take them through the process that allows for them to collaboratively work together to begin to create lyrics from those experiences, those emotions, those shared commonalities that they've identified. And then we help them not only start to create lyrics, but we also help them to flush out the way that the music sounds based on what they've been describing are their experiences. So everything is very, very intentional. There's no piped in music that they're being given. All of the music really comes from a very deep place of transforming those emotions, transforming those experiences into sound, into lyrics, into rhythms, into rhymes. And they all represent the many layers of the emotions that they're all going through. We're not singular people who only feel one thing at a certain time, right? We're people who feel many layers of things, especially in a traumatic situation. And so all of those experiences are represented in the music, in the rhythms, in the rhymes, in the lyrics. And we're able to work virtually through a recording platform where we are recording in real time, just like you and I here are talking right now. We're able to record, and everyone has access to this very simple, easy recording platform. They're able to record their vocals. They're able to record any instruments that they might play. And we're able to gather collectively all of those elements while we're working together. And then we produce that song into a fully professional produced piece of work. And then we gather together again at the end to listen to this amazing experience that they've translated into a powerful art form. And we talk about it. We share how it's changed us, what we've grown from, how we've learned, and how we've been changed. And then each of those participants gets to take home that recording of these to have for themselves, to continue to help them, as well as to share with others.
So Lane, and we're talking to Lane Gardner, the president and co-founder of Threads. How do you get your message out? Because I imagine you want to work with not only groups of individuals, but communities or organizations who are also dealing with this. What's the website? How do you get people across the United States or around the world, because it's virtual, to know about what you're doing? Or how have you been doing?
We have been doing exactly what we're doing right now, which is talking, being able to be seen more, have more exposure for the work that we are getting up and running. Like so many people, as a young nonprofit, we've had to sort of reorient ourselves a million times over the last year in order to be able to find creative ways to get our work out into the world, to get to more communities that we can bring this powerful work to. We've been also sharing the videos of the work that we've done so far. We've been sharing that on our social media. We've been sharing that through our website. We've been sharing that through our newsletters. And, our goal is to be able to reach as many people as possible.
So, Lane, the ability, as you were talking about, you have the newsletter, et cetera, but how are you getting this message out other than what, if somebody's listening to this or watching this, and we'll post the website on the screen, but for those who are not watching it, what's the website? If somebody wants to get a hold of you, what's the website? How do they do that?
They can go to threadconnects.org, which is our website. They can email threadconnects.org. Mm-hmm. And on our website, there are multiple portals for those to reach out to us. We have, in particular, one particular page, which is support a program, sponsor a program, volunteer with us, reach out to us, connect with us. So there's many different portals on our website to be able to reach out to us and connect with us directly.
So on the website, and I wanted to follow up now that we have the idea of what you do and how you do it with organizations, etc. You have this at the top of page 3 of part of your website. It says, our work serves the needs of survivors of abuse, those struggling with addiction and mental health, cancer survivors, incarcerated men and women, veterans, and those impacted by inequality and discrimination surrounding gender, race, sexuality, and religion. We also implement programs to address the urgent need of communities affected by gun violence, natural disasters, and other crisis scenarios. How do you find time to sleep? Okay.
Well, listen, unfortunately, trauma is an incredibly pervasive thing in our world, and it's unfortunately also on the rise. There are so many people impacted by not only the current situation in terms of the pandemic, but with all the groups that you just listed, there is historical chronic trauma that lives in many, many people. And so our goal is to be able to reach as many different communities and many different organizations that serve those particular communities as we can. And we're looking to partner with other nonprofits, with other communities, with other organizations that serve those particular relations, to be able to bring this work to them, to be able to bring this work to these communities that struggle in so many different ways. Trauma, unfortunately, isn't very particular. It affects so many people in so many different ways. And so we are able to bring this work and we're able to adapt it to any of these particular communities because the experience of trauma is so pervasive for so many people.
Suppose somebody's listening to this and they say, well, I'm part of a community that really could use some of this. We've been through a horrible time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I have the website, threadconnects.org, and I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to try and get a hold of this lady. And I make contact with you, and we start to talk about bringing Thread to my organization. So here's the practical economic question. How much is it going to cost? Unless you do this for free.
Well, there's a couple different ways in which we work this. We are always, like any nonprofit, we're constantly trying to raise money for this work, to garner the support for this kind of programming. So there are times when we are able to bring this work to communities that are not able to pay for it. We are able to raise those funds and be able to deliver that work for free. We also work to partner with organizations where we can share the cost of the program as well. Young nonprofits like ours have limited funds sometimes, and so to be able to share the cost of programming is another way. And then the third way, of course, if we're working with an organization that happens to have the funding for the program, then that is the third way in which we're able to work it. So we are able to really tailor our partnership to the needs of the community that we're working with. And it's a true partnership between us and between them, both in serving the community and also finding the best way to make the programming possible.
Have you been contacted, or given the events of the last year, with all the concerns with racial inequality, the Black Lives Matter, the recent outbreaks of atrocities against the Asian American community. Have you begun to do stuff, workshops around racial inequality and just awareness, or is this something that's still in the process?
We have not had the opportunity to do that, but we are absolutely looking to do that. We're in conversations with several different organizations right now, and we're hoping to be able to make those partnerships move forward. But we're absolutely looking for the opportunity to be able to address some of these really, really deep issues through through the creative process, and to be able to partner and be able to help to shed more light on the inequalities that are out there. Absolutely.
You also mentioned in the two programs that you talked about, and thank you for doing that, that the goal, or the product, if that's the right word, probably isn't the right word, was a song. But your training, and as you mentioned at the top of the podcast, your background, do you also, or have you also done other things with the arts, either not only just music, but a painting or a play or drama that help weave these threads of reality together? Or is that still, have you done that other than song?
We have not done that yet as Thread. We have experimented with those kind of programs before we officially became our nonprofit. But Thread has a huge vision. And right now, as a young nonprofit, we're focusing on our particular wheelhouse as songwriters, as musicians. But the absolute goal for our expansion is to be able to bring these different modalities, to be able to bring art, therapeutic art, visual art, to be able to use drama, to be able to use movement, to be able to use even spoken word or film. There's no limit to the way in which you can use any of these particular art forms to do the work of healing and connection and transforming those difficult experiences. They're all incredibly powerful platforms. And as we grow, we will be expanding into using more and more modalities.
And the arts really, in many ways, is this, I don't want to offend my mental health professional friends, but in many ways, it reaches a part of the soul that talk therapy doesn't reach. We all respond to music in certain ways. I know if I am in a certain mood, I know what music to play to either get me really more depressed or to bring me out of it. Okay. But a play or a film that triggers emotions, the arts really touch a part of the soul that just talk therapy doesn't. And I would imagine that that's part of the motivation of what Thread does. Am I correct?
I'm so glad you said that. That's absolutely right. One of the most important things is that being able to get beyond your thoughts, get beyond your mind, and into the creative process, you do access parts of your soul, parts of your experience that are not as easy to access by just simply talking about them. You're using these different elements of sound, of rhythm, of rhyme, of color, of texture, all of these different ways that express in ways that words cannot. And one of the wonderful things that we want to be able to make known to those who we can hopefully bring this work to is that sometimes talk therapy can be intimidating for some people. Sometimes I think individuals feel that maybe it's not for them. And being able to work through difficult experiences in a creative way makes it very accessible for anyone. It makes it accessible because it's not only fun and cathartic, but it's also collaborative. You're not doing it by yourself. You're doing it in a community of like-minded people. And so there's a safety in that. There's encouragement in that. There's being able to be witnessed and seen for what you're going through. And that's an incredibly powerful thing that the arts can offer that talk therapy can't. And that's why we feel at Thread here that this work is so urgent right now. It's an innovative way for us to be able to work through the rising levels of trauma right now in a creative and cathartic way. And it's innovative in the way that allows for people to come together and counteract the isolation at the same time.
And I also would imagine in the work that you do, being an artist, that when you have a group of people working on a project, whether it's a song or play or film, that it's non-judgmental. That, you know, if I come up with a lyric that's like totally here, or that's my lyric, and it may speak to where I am in my journey. So there's no right or wrong. Am I right or wrong?
That's absolutely correct. There is no judgment. It is, you know, the very, very beginning tenets of the way we set up the experience is an incredibly safe space. There is no judgment. And one of the wonderful things about being able to have a collaborative process like this is that every person tends to find their sort of little pocket that they feel comfortable in. So not everyone is going to feel comfortable singing. Not everyone is going to feel comfortable writing words. Not everyone is going to feel comfortable, playing a little egg shaker, or whatever these different instruments that we're using. And people tend to find the things that make them feel really capable and really proud. And the group impact is very encouraging and very supportive. So, being able to put yourself out there creatively can be a little bit intimidating, but the safe space is an incredibly important part of our process.
Right. And the safety of the community, even virtually. So thank you. Lane Gardner, the president and co-founder of Thread, thank you very, very much for being with us on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning. This is really a wonderful idea, and I wish you just continued success and joy and peace, and as you're helping to transform individuals as they kind of like walk through the valley of the shadow of trauma, which is so sadly, as you mentioned, so prevalent in today's world. So we will probably be very, very busy. So thank you again. Take care. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. And all of you, thank you again for listening or watching today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the TV show and podcast of Jewish Sacred Aging. Again, we welcome your comments and suggestions to me, Rabbi Address, at jewishsacredaging.com. You can go to the homepage, jewishsacredaging.com. If you'd like to make a donation to help support our work, a tax-free donation, just go to the website and click on the donate icon. We appreciate that very, very much. A reminder that Seekers of Meaning is produced by the Broadcast Center of Lubetkin Media Companies in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And again, a big shout out to our producer, Steve Lubetkin. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address, and I look forward to greeting you on the next Seekers of Meaning TV show and podcast. In the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, everybody, and shalom.